Good afternoon, buenas tardes, buona tarda. Which ones of you think that the Third World War already started? And I'm asking that because my children are convinced that it already started. You can raise your hand for the ones who think that yeah, you have a few of them.
I'm from the States.
You're from the States, so you can confirm. Thank you very much. I don't know if the Third World War already started. What I know for sure is that the hybrid war did start, and already a long time ago. And obviously, cybersecurity is a big part of it. And from the European perspective, there is a big concern how to build the resilience of Europe from a cybersecurity perspective. I guess that if you are here today, you probably have heard already or know already what NIS2 is. I'm not sure if you can also raise your hand, the ones who have already implemented NIS2. You know what it is? Okay, but did some... Okay. Today I will walk you through not the legal or administrative part of NIS2. I'm not saying it's boring, but that's not my core expertise. I will walk you through the implementation of NIS2 across Europe, the differences between the different countries. So there are three parts in my presentation. The differences between the different European countries, the feedback from companies, organizations that have already started with the implementation of NIS2 and their main takeaways, and last but not least, a few use cases of different industries from more a sectorial perspective. So first of all, let me introduce quickly myself. My name is Regis. I'm not from the US, I'm from France. And I lived in many different countries across the globe. I lived in Spain for many years, also in Asia, and I'm currently based in the Netherlands. Today I'm speaking on behalf of ECSO, the European Cybersecurity Organization. I will share a few words about the organization for the ones who don't know the organization yet. I have a few more roles. I work for NIS2 Grupo, a Spanish headquarter cybersecurity companies. I'm leading the international expansion in Europe. And I'm also a vice chair at ITIA, which is the Eureka cluster on software innovation and digital transformation. And I have a few activities as an advisor in different organizations and non-for-profit organizations. I'm a proud mentor at Women for Cyber, so I'm happy to see a few female in the audience. Not so many as I would like, but it's getting better, so we're working hard on it. Enough of speaking about myself. A few words about ECSO. ECSO stands for European Cybersecurity Organization. We are an association, and we are basically building a community, a cybersecurity community across Europe. Everybody is welcome, from large to small companies, public and private organizations, research institutes, etc., etc., etc. And we basically represent the interest of the cybersecurity community across Europe. We try to improve the access to market for our members, the access to funding, and we try also to influence on the legislations and legacy makers so that they can take into account the need from the market. And this is from that perspective that today I will share the takeaways that, surveying our members, we have shared with the European Commission regarding the implementation of NIS2. I hope for the ones who are here today that you already know what NIS2 is. If you forgot a bit about it, the NIS2 stands for Network and Information Security Directive. It's the version 2.0 because there was a NIS1 a few years ago. The difference between NIS2 and NIS1 is that the scope of the directive is wider, bigger, the requirements, and also the enforcement mechanism. So you see here on the screen, I don't want to go too much into details, but basically there are more companies, organizations than before that are impacted by NIS2. Especially SMEs, above 50 employees. The security requirements are stronger. Maybe important to highlight, I think, two things. The mandatory incident report. So one of the main challenges we faced in the past was that the cybersecurity incidents, people were rather shy about it, so we didn't share that information, so we couldn't help each other or anticipate. So now it's mandatory by law. And probably what it's even more relevant is that the personal responsibility of the legal representatives of the company is at stake. So they are responsible legally for that, and the company's organization can have fines up to 10 million euros. So let's say that it's becoming quite serious. Before we start, the information I will share with you is a very small extract from a white paper that was published by ECSO, and I want here to acknowledge the different organizations that participated in this white paper. This publication is free. You can download it. At the end of the presentation, you will see the QR code, and I think the presentation will also be available online. I think there are no questions at this stage, but if that's the case, please raise your hand. First thing important, ECSO is, as far as we know, the only organization that is publishing what we call the NIS2 tracker. So you can check online and live update of the state of the transposition, which means which countries have already transposed the NIS2 directive and which one have not. You can find different websites where you see a one-shot picture at a certain date, but this is updated every month based on the feedback of our community of CISOs, and there are more than 500 members from all across Europe. We update this information. And you can see that we are already first takeaway of the presentation of today. We are still far behind in terms of transposition. You see that 16 countries haven't transposed yet the NIS2 directive. We expect Denmark to do it by the end of the summer, so which will bring it to 12 countries, but still we are very behind. There are different reasons for that, political reasons, changes of governments, complexity in the legal procedures of the different countries. Also, some countries are taking into account the different inputs from the market. So sometimes that's also these consultations also take time. You have here the QR code if you want to check it online. First, so apart from the first conclusion that not all countries have already transposed the NIS2, first thing that you can look with the transposition of NIS2 is that the sector classification, so which means depending on the industry you work in, are different from a country to another. And you see here many different examples, which means that a company, for example, that works in the mining industry may be considered as a critical service or infrastructure in some countries and in others, no. And that creates obviously inefficiencies, but also disparities and inequalities among the different companies. So from even I would say competition point of view, it's kind of unfair situation for a country. And obviously for the companies that belong to a critical sector, according to NIS2, there are obviously costs associated to it. So that's the first takeaway from the survey that we have done with our members, is that the sector classification, so which means a company organization is supposed to follow the NIS2 regulation, is different from a country to another. Second main differences, and you have seen that already with the number of countries who have already transposed and the one who didn't, is the timing. So the timelines to be compliant with NIS2 is also very different from a country to another. So that also creates, so you can imagine for example, a multinational company or international organization that has presence or operates in different European countries, the rules or criteria may change from a country to another, but also the timeline. So you can imagine how complex it is to manage that. So then you have two options. First one, you say, okay, I will choose the most the bigger requirement, and I will align, so I will take the shorter deadline and apply it across all countries, or I will have a complex matrix system where I will adapt to the different timelines in the different country. So again, this creates complexity, and it's, let's say, against the interest of the common European market. And again, impact in terms of resources allocation and cost for the different organization. And you see that the disparity is huge. So it could be 6 months, 18 months, so 3 times more. So it's we're not just speaking of a small difference. More disparities, more differences. In terms of incident reporting, the obligation for reporting are also different from a country to another. So it means that the scope or the type of incident that have to be reported are also different from a country to another. And you can simply imagine if you have a cyber incident that impacts your manufacturing facilities in different locations, how big the headaches can very quickly become for a company who has to comply with NIS2. Is there any question on this? It was a quick, there are more takeaways, but this is the first part of the presentation to highlight how different the disparity between the different European countries and the impact for the different European organizations to comply with NIS2. Having said that, we also we did a survey. We asked our members how was their experience implementing NIS2, what were the challenges and opportunities that they see. We received 155 responses from 23 European countries, and I will quickly share with you the conclusion of the survey. So first, you see here that the organization that we surveyed belong to very different sectors. So I think we have a very representative array of sectors, industrial sectors being represented. And you see also in terms of organization size that we have also from very small organization of less than 50 employees up to above 100,000. So we also have very large corporation who replied the survey that we did. Here you see in terms of countries that many European countries were representative. I want to congratulate the people from Spain. They were very active answering the survey, and also in Belgium. The people who answered the survey were mostly CISOs or members of the CISO team. So we were really speaking with the people directly impacted by the implementation of NIS2. They knew about what they were talking about. And I think very remarkable, and that's why we insisted on the differences between countries. You see that more than 2/3 of the organization have an international scope. So they have to comply with NIS2 in more than one country. So international organization, most of them. You see also, and I think it's important, that more than half of the organization that we surveyed were not in NIS1. So it means that it was new. So it's almost double the number of organizations that are now obliged to comply with NIS2, that had to adapt. And you will see there are differences with the organization that were already complying with NIS1. They had to adapt to NIS2. So it was, I would say, a smoother step. But for the one who jumped directly into NIS2, that was quite harsh, especially for smaller organizations. So first challenges, we asked our members, what are the challenges that you face when it comes to implementing NIS2? And you see, and I think it's pretty a concern. The first one was the lack of clarity. So basically, we don't really know what we have to do, so which is a big concern. The second one is related with supply chain. By this, we mean that the NIS2 security requirements also cover the supply chain, so basically the providers, your providers, and how do you ensure that the companies you work for, the providers that serve you product and services, are also compliant and do not put you in a situation where you would not be NIS2 compliant. And I will just highlight the third one, the cross-border implementation, which is clearly a consequence of all what I have mentioned before, or the disparity among countries. So for cross-border organization, it's just a nightmare. Some best practices. So we asked for the organization, okay, that doesn't look very good, but let's see if we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. So we asked the companies who already went through NIS1, what are the best practices or the pieces of advice that you can share with the other organization to comply with NIS2. I think probably one important, oops, sorry. I think I pressed the wrong button. Oops, I'm back. Here we are. Sorry, I won't touch any more buttons. I just wanted to highlight that leveraging ISO 27001 is from far the most frequent recommendation. And we have seen that many organizations, in order to deal with the NIS2 and NIS2 requirement, they have used as a kind of umbrella the ISO standard. And that's one of our key conclusions and recommendation that we also share with the European Commission, is to have some standards and the same standards associated, so that we can also compare and have everybody following the same standards and requirement. Nothing particular, the second one, so I don't know if that's something we should be really proud of. And I would say the risk management focus and the awareness and training, obviously, that's, I would say, not specific to NIS2. I think that's probably one of the most frequent recommendations when it comes to cybersecurity, but obviously for NIS2, it was also one of the recommendations. We see that a quarter of the organization had a dedicated budget for NIS2. That doesn't mean that the other ones do not have a budget for it, but it can just be part of the bigger cybersecurity budget. But some organizations do have a dedicated budget, and you see on the right the size that this represents compared to the overall security cybersecurity budget. And you see that if you take the first one, up to 10%, so the 3/4, so which means that the economical impact of NIS2 is quite significant. So it's up to between 5 and 10% of the total cybersecurity budget of the organization that answered the survey. That's probably the most concerning slide from my perspective. We asked our members if the top management of the organization was involved in the implementation of NIS2. And you see that we have approximately, maybe 60%. So I think from a cybersecurity point of view, I think many people would be happy with that. Say, well, it's getting better. Because in the past, it was only a technical thing. Top management was never aware or interested or involved in cybersecurity. So from that perspective, I agree with you. It's rather good news. But from a NIS2 perspective, when you see that the legal responsibility of the management is engaged, that's quite concerning. Or at least I would be concerned. And then we also ask our members how the top management was involved. It was involved actively or just aware about it. And you see that, well, a big part at least are engaged actively. So this is something that we need to improve, because that's. This was the second part of the presentation. Before I move to the last part, I want to share with you some use cases. So we have many of them. I think on the white paper we have 9 use cases. I've only selected 3 of them because of the time constraints that we have today. But if you are interested in different sectors, do not hesitate to download the white paper. Is there any question before I move to the last part of? Yes? Yeah, one of the use, very good question. And so I'm not sure if everybody could hear, but basically the question was, is there any best practice recommendation for the cross-border complexity of implementing NIS2, especially for large or international organizations? One of the use cases we have was from a multinational company. I cannot disclose the name, but with an electrical manufacturer with more than 100,000 employees. I can answer quickly the question. In that case, what they did was mostly to follow ISO 27001 across all countries. And with this, they were almost at 80–90% compliant, and then they only had to do some, let's say, add-on to specific country. But that's a first use case example from the energy sector. So in that case, I think this organization was the lucky one in the sense that they were already under the NIS1 requirement, so they only had to adapt to the new requirement of NIS2. The key challenges they face regarding the implementation of NIS2 was related with the convergence between IT and OT, so that they have also a difference, let's say, of deployment of cybersecurity standards protocols between their IT and their OT environment. So how do you put at the same level? And that's something that's quite recurrent. And we also notice it now with not only IT and OT, but also with CT, consumer technology, where you see, for example, on the manufacturing floors, more and more employees or providers having smartwatch, iPad, etc. So how do you manage to be consistent across these three different domains that are more and more intertwined? Another challenge they had was that they were dealing with third parties for the security managed services, and they had also lack of clarity between the role between the different teams working on cybersecurity. And here, as I mentioned before, they also decided to use ISO 27001 as an umbrella framework and mapping to different other standards. They also focus on enhancing the risk management and to expand their SOC capabilities, especially to comply with the reporting and incident response capabilities. So that was one example of the energy sector. Another, I would say, critical, very important sector is the healthcare. You know that they are heavily, unfortunately, targeted by, in terms of cybersecurity. In that case, they also had to leverage the NIS2 audit, and they already had to be compliant with many, many different provisions. The key challenges they faced in that case was related with the multiple incoming regulations. So not only NIS2, but also CR, ESG, supply chain. So they were a bit under the water with all the regulation coming to them. And you know that the healthcare sector is not always the most equipped in terms of technical resources, at least from a cybersecurity point of view. They have very complex environment to deal with. If you go to a hospital, it's a completely open environment with a mix of patients, family, doctors, providers. So from a cybersecurity point of view, I think it's probably the worst situation that you can expect. And here the same. They decided to leverage different standards, so they made it a bit more complex than the previous example. And they also strengthened other privacy aspects, like the GDPR and et cetera. And they also did a supplier assessment to comply with all the different, and OT, which also is quite recurrent. So that was for the healthcare. And, sorry, I went around. And the last but not least, so maybe not the most, the one from which we can take more takeaways from a NIS2 perspective, but I thought it was good anyway to show you this case of the finance. I think they are probably the one are facing less challenges to comply with NIS2. The reason is that the financial sector is already, let's say, covered by the DORA regulation, which is specific to the finance sector and which is even, I would say, stronger in terms of requirements than the NIS2 directive. I would say from a cybersecurity point of view, also the finance sector is probably the most mature one. Cybersecurity has been for very many, many years already a strong focus. So they didn't really see it as a challenge. For them, it was more a matter of paperwork. So they were the lucky ones, but I also wanted to share this example. And so basically what they did is to leverage the business impact assessment they had through DORA to comply with NIS2. I'm on time. We still have 4 minutes before I finish. I think I have a few conclusion slides. The first one is that based on what I have shared very quickly with you, so as a result of the white paper we did, of the survey we did, of all the feedback and the use cases from our members, these are the 9 recommendations that we share mainly with the legislation makers in the European. So basically, the first recommendation we do is to have one single point of reporting and not having to report in each country or different places. We are also encouraging and recommending to have one single a template or standard format to report different incidents. Again, if you think about the example of a multinational company, if one incident impacts different countries and they have to do for each country a different report. We also would like to have a European risk management framework that would be common to all the European countries with the same unique methodology and open source tool that would be commonly adopted by all European countries. The same for the supply chain framework. We would like to have a normalized security framework. And we also strongly encourage that to demonstrate that an organization is compliant with NIS2, it should be sufficient to comply with existing standards so that we don't bring additional bureaucracy or complexity to the organization that have already made the efforts to comply with existing standards. We also recommend to provide a specific support, targeted support for the entities that we call disadvantaged entities. So for example, mainly the smaller organization from 50 employees that have to comply with exactly the same requirement that the large multinational companies, or for the cross-border organization that have to comply with the regulation in many different countries. We also recommend to create an interactive table mapping NIS2 requirements compared with existing standards, so to make it easy for the organization to comply, to establish a centralized European information hub, and to continue engage with all the stakeholders. And that's where ECSO will play a big role. We represent the cybersecurity community across Europe, so our voice is being listened. So just a small page of advertisement for the ones who are not member of ECSO yet. Feel free to reach out at the end. This is my last slides. You have here the QR code. So if you want to download the white paper, I really encourage you. It's a very comprehensive, easy to read document, and you will have more details than what I could share today. The transposition tracker, you already had and then another publication from ECSO regarding the regulatory obligation. Thank you very much. I was also asked by the organization if you can rate this session and do it on the go, and then they also have feedback about the session. Thank you very much for your attention. Do we have any questions? We still have 20 seconds if anybody has a burning question to ask. Yeah, please. You have a mic? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Oh, great. So last year, I have spent a lot of work working in cybersecurity on NIS2 and RED directives. And one of the questions that comes in is how the assessment, what is the assessment process, and how, for example, when some of the best security practices needs to be involved, what is the measure of that, and how that process goes in? Can you maybe fill up some info on that?
So your question, if I understand well, is that for a company that's already implementing some cybersecurity measures, how this is being assessed to check that?
Yeah, basically. So some of the one of the things that NIS2 has made is awareness, of course, and of course it broadened the industries which are affected by it, which now needs to be a compliant. And when it comes to compliance, how that process is going to be made, how the assessment works in general.
That's the main issue that we are pointing out here, is that NIS2 was a regulation made by the policymakers, and that's where we recommend to follow the industry standards, which are, let's say, with a very specific audit that you can measure, because that's what you are pointing out. That's exactly what I think we are missing in NIS2, and which also varies from a country to another. So so I don't have the answer. That's what we are pushing for. And I hope, so our wish is that it should be linked to some industry standards, not necessarily the ISO 27001, which I think is probably the one that the industry would more widely accept. But that's not, as of today, there is no not answer yet to that. So thank you for your question. Any Other question? No? Well, just want to thank you very much. Thank you, the organization also, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.